We are going to continue looking at some of the teams that have been right on the cusp of college football playoffs. In this case, SEC championships, though they were in that conversation last year. It's the Tennessee Vols. They're on the top of everyone's mind, honestly, after Nico Iamaleava decides to take off and UCLA and Tennessee do a little bit of musical quarterbacks, if you will, as Joey Aguilar makes his way over from UCLA. It's the talk of the college football world, right? And NIL has been something that's been at the top of the college football world, and without diving too far deep into the weeds on college football, and like college football is a damsel in distress at times. This was a kind of a breath of fresh air in a way, Mason, with Nico and the way that everything was handled here. As somebody who sat back and said college football is kind of going down a little bit of the wrong path, it seems, it was kind of nice to sit back and just kind of be like, well, told you so. It wasn't always going to be good for every single kid, right? And,
Yep.
Everybody can have whatever opinion they want, but this wasn't great for Nico Iamaleava, in my opinion. I feel like it was some bad counsel, whatever have you. What are your thoughts on the Nico situation? I wanted to just go ahead and spearhead that, and then we're going to go into what's up with this team for 2025, right? This obviously changes some things offensively. There's obviously big changes from 2024, so we're going to go into a lot of that stuff and some of the pieces that are coming back for Tennessee and where they'll need to reload. But I just wanted to spearhead this thing with the Nico situation. What are your thoughts, Mason?
Yeah, I completely agree with you because Nico, and it's pretty well documented now, went from making 2.4 million roughly. We can kind of speculate as to what he was making in 2024, and then went backwards, right, to UCLA to make less money, allegedly, seemingly, after asking for more money, after asking for a $1.6 million raise. Tennessee says, "Hey, wait a second, we were going to pay you less money, actually, dude. We don't feel like you deserve what we were paying you. This isn't what we signed up for." And good on them for not just saying, "Hey, we got to keep this quarterback," and dishing out the money. Instead, they saved some of that money, and now they're able to seemingly utilize that in other areas and allocate those resources somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any chance you get to, add some funds to this section of the team here or there is great. But, now there's a little bit of a issue, right? I mean, this definitely creates a little bit of a snafu in your plans for 2025. Was Nico worth, spending more money on? Honestly, I don't think so, Mason. You look at some of the numbers from last year, and they're not terrible. They're not bad numbers, and probably pretty similar to what we've seen along the same lines of a lot of quarterbacks as their first year being a starter in the SEC. 2,616 yards, which is not great for an overall number, but 63.8% completion percentage, and that was good for 7.8 yards average, which that kind of goes to show you how Nico was used. A lot of dink and dunk passing there. 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. I don't think we ever got to see Nico fully comfortable in the offense. I don't think we ever got to see him handed the reins to the offense by any means. I think it was a very it was set up for kind of some stopgaps, like let's make sure that we're not turning the ball over, things like that. I don't think Nico is a polished player, and I think that it was foolish of him to come out and ask for the bag whenever there was clearly work to be done. He wasn't at the top of the SEC. He wasn't at the top of the country as far as quarterbacks that you'd want to have on your team. So I thought it was foolish, and I thought it was bad advice by his counsel's part, and I feel bad for Nico in that sense. But apparently these talks and things have been going on for a while, Mason. There were some rumors that he was talking about sitting out of a playoff game, this
Yeah.
past, or at least threatened to, and so as a coach and as a program, it's hard to build anything around that, right? Whenever you
Yeah.
don't know if somebody's going to be there or not. So let this be a lesson, I think, to all the NILers out there. Go get your money. Don't hear this the wrong way. I'm a businessman myself. You got to go get the money, but you also have to conduct yourself, as a reasonable human, and stomping your feet and asking demands of people and things like that, or I'm out of here, isn't always the best way to handle things. And I think we all kind of learned a lesson with that, and I hope some of the other kids in college football learn that as well. Let's jump into the rest of the team here, though, Mason. Dylan Sampson's gone. As far as I'm concerned, you want to talk about upper echelon player on this team from last year? Dylan Sampson was that guy. That guy was this offense in a lot of ways. Even whenever he wasn't running the ball, that they established the run game so hardcore offensively last year that it affected the rest of the game. And without Dylan Sampson being in there, and Chris Brazel and Mike Matthews needing to step up at the wide receiver position, you do return Kitzelman at tight end, but I feel like there is a little bit of a lack of star power as far as the specialized players here on this offense. We just talked about Nico, so you got Aguilar in there and Merklinger that are going to be competing it out for the quarterback position, and you're going to have a lot of eggs in the Chris Brazel and Mike Matthews basket, who, by the way, collectively caught for about 400 receiving yards total last year between the two of them. Now there was some injuries and things like that amongst those guys, and so not both of them didn't play every single game. But you get my point. Where are the reps coming from? Right? Where who has the experience on this offense? I think the Vols going out and getting Joey Aguilar, I think that was a grasp for a player with some experience. But go back and look at who Joey Aguilar has played over the last few years, man. I mean, the list of teams is so starkly different than what he is going to see at Tennessee in the 2025 season. And I wouldn't even consider it to be an unbelievable Tennessee schedule for 2025 season, but it's comparing apples and oranges. So I don't think you know at all what you're getting with Joey Aguilar, right? So I'm thinking you got to, as a Tennessee fan, really be hoping that Merklinger is the answer to those Rocky Top prayers. What are your thoughts on this offense? I think that there is an identity that is going to need to be kind of sought after, figured out, and kind of played out into the season. Luckily, we're going to talk about it here in a few minutes. The schedule kind of sets up where you got a few games to get things going, minus the Georgia game the third week of the season. But other than that, you got some cupcakes around there to kind of figure out what your identity is here. What are your thoughts on offense for the Vols going into 2025?
First of all, let's start with the quarterback. Joey Aguilar coming over. We don't know that he's going to be the starter, but he's probably going to be the starter. I don't know that you bring Joey Aguilar to Tennessee without having an idea of seeing him as the starter of this offense. I like some of the things that he did with App State last year. He seems to be a quarterback that, and this is a double-edged sword because he holds on to the ball. I don't want to say too long because it's not always too long. A lot of times when a quarterback is able to take pressure, which is something that Nico couldn't do a lot last year, was take pressure. That's seen as a positive thing. For Joey Aguilar, he steps up into the pocket, he sees pressure in a lot of cases, and he'll hold the ball and get hit throwing the football. Like, you like to see that sort of tenacity as a quarterback, but in some cases it got him in trouble where he was holding on to the football a little bit too long. So I think if he can develop a little bit in that sense, and I'm sure he will, going over to Tennessee, he could be a pretty good quarterback for the Vols. Behind him, you've got Jake Merklinger, you've got a really talented true freshman in George McIntyre. I could see McIntyre coming in later in the year, But I've also heard good things about Merklinger. Maybe Merklinger is a guy who competes early for some playing time, and then if the season falls off, um, depending on who the starting quarterback is, whether that's Aguilar or Merklinger, maybe McIntyre gets a shot later in the year. I just don't think that McIntyre is going to come in as a true freshman to a SEC football team that has aspirations of going back to the college football playoff and starting right away. That's just not. This isn't Nebraska, right? Where with the Dylan Raiola situation, Tennessee's a little bit of a higher echelon of a program, and they're not looking to start a true freshman at quarterback. So I think that we can remove McIntyre from the situation. I put my money on Aguilar to start. So who are the pieces around him, right? Well, you're losing your top three wide receivers from a yards and a production standpoint from last year. You're losing Dante Thorman, Brew McCoy, Squirrel White. Those three combined for about 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. So it's a tough loss. However, Brew McCoy was inconsistent all year, right? Dante Thornton was inconsistent all year. Still, I mean, he ended up with 661 yards, which is great. 6 touchdowns, that's great. Nothing that you can't replace, though, in my mind, from a statistical standpoint. It's not something that you can't replace. Squirrel White, the same way. All three of those guys, as talented as they are, as fast as they are, as big as they are, in the case of Dante Thornton, they also struggled to be consistent throughout the entirety of the season. So, do we see addition by subtraction here? That's kind of my question. You've got Mike Matthews, who showed some absolute flashes last year as a true freshman, comes in as a 5-star, but getting him more reps, making him a true number one wide receiver, does that elevate his game? I think it very well could. He's a guy who's got a lot of juice, a lot of big play potential, and I want to see him in this offense. I think that he can be a true number one. And then you've got Chris Brazell, who adds a little bit of a different dynamic as kind of that number two, a little bit more of a speedster, kind of beat you over the top sort of wide receiver. I think he's going to play really well in this role, especially if Mike Matthews is getting a lot of the attention. And then you got Braylon Staley, who is a fine number three. I think he's going to do just fine. A little bit of a smaller kind of slot receiver there. You've got three receivers here for Tennessee that I feel really comfortable with. Behind that, I think that they've been trying to bring in some depth, and it hasn't worked out yet for whatever reason. They're still in the spring portal window trying to pull in another transfer wide receiver. It hasn't really happened yet. The only one that they did get was Amari Jefferson, comes over from Alabama. He's going to be a redshirt freshman, so he's got plenty of time to develop and play. Last year at Alabama, he was injured for the entirety of the season, so we don't know what you're getting out of him, but he was a top 35 receiver coming out of high school. So we'll see how he performs this year. And then you bring in a couple of true freshmen and Smith and Jackson, and outside of that, and also Joakim Dotson. Outside of that, though, there's not a ton of depth. So I think you're going to be relying pretty heavily on Miles Kitselman, who's a guy in our preview last year we kind of made fun of because he's a scratch golfer and said, "Hey, man, you might want to stick to golf." That was one we missed on. He's a really good tight end, and I was really impressed with him last year. He kind of made his money there last year. Now he's going to be your starting tight end, so kudos to you. And then Ethan Davis. I thought he was a great redshirt freshman last year. He's got a little bit more potential, I think, as an athletic tight end, sort of that mold. But I could definitely see some 12 personnel, with this group. Yeah. But outside of that, Peyton Lewis, fine running back. Deshaun Bishop. I don't have any questions about the running back situation. I mean, losing Dylan Sampson is huge, but I do think that you're going to be able to replace him. I think Peyton Lewis did fine from a production standpoint last year when he was given his opportunities. But the line in front of him is where I think that Tennessee may have gotten better on the offensive line. I mean, you're losing Cooper Mays, right? And that's really about it on the offensive line from a snap count standpoint, from a talent standpoint. I think he was kind of your most talented guy, and and he didn't even go to the NFL. As far as I know, he hasn't been signed yet. So there's not a ton of lost production on the O line. That was a big part of their success last year in the run game. So if you're telling me that those two things are true, and you add in by some would argue the number one overall player in the country in David Sanders, if not number one overall, number one offensive tackle in David Sanders as a true freshman coming over. He'll have his hands full with battling with Jesse Perry for sure at that right tackle position. You combine that with getting in a transfer and Wendell Moe Jr. coming over from Arizona, who apparently is ready to start right away. I think you've got a pretty solid offensive line that you can sort of build around. That to me is going to be the best unit on the offense is going to be your offensive line, and that's a pretty good sign if you're Tennessee. Now, would you like to have a really strong quarterback? Yes. However, a lot of people this offseason and heading into the season are going to point to Nico being absent from this team and saying, well, that hurt them. That took them from a 10-win team to an 8-win team. And I just don't think that that's the case. If Tennessee ends up with 8 wins this year, it's not going to be because Nico left. Nico and his production last year wasn't enough to get you 2 wins. He wasn't worth 2 wins last year. I don't see that at all. So if this offense does struggle, I just want to go on the record and say it's not going to be because Nico's not there. It's not going to be because of the quarterback position. I think if it does struggle, it's going to be because of the wide receivers and the lack of depth. To me, that's the weakest unit on the offense. I like the 1, 2, and 3. I think that they've got a little bit of a variety there. But if any of those 3 go out, one of those true freshmen are going to have to step up. Yeah, I mean, that's just how it is. Maybe the transfer from Alabama, but ultimately, to me, that's how I would rank it. It's offensive line, tight ends, running back, quarterback, wide receivers on the offense. But if your offensive line is good, you're probably going to have a pretty good year. I just see this Tennessee team running the football a ton this year.
Yeah, well, and that would be chapter 2 of what was chapter 1 last year of Tennessee running the football, right? And it was a little bit of a change of pace, I think, in a lot of people's eyes, even though it really wasn't. From 2023 to 2024, they didn't run the ball that much more, but the identity of the offense was running the football, and it got everyone's attention. Tennessee ran the ball a lot in 23. They ran a lot in 24, and I don't think it's any secret they will be running it a lot in 2025. It's, for me, I think you're right on the offensive line. I don't think you take a massive step back. I do. I always worry. It's not David Sanders that I'm worried about. It's every freshman,
Mm-hmm.
every single one of them. And I'm glad he's in the right tackle position. We watched Georgia last year with Ernest Green, trying to put him at the left tackle spot. And that's a tough spot for a freshman. Probably the toughest spot on the offensive line for a freshman. Looks like David Sanders would be on that right side. I'm interested to see how that works out. And then at the center spot, you got Max Anderson, the redshirt freshman. We'll see how that kind of develops as the spring, summer months, and then into the fall. We'll kind of see how, because these offensive lines, they get shaken up all the time with injuries and things like that. So, and I completely agree with you on the tight end situation. That seems to be pretty much locked down. And Peyton Lewis and Deshaun Bishop, I agree with you there as well. But it's all going to depend on them big boys up front. I'm not too worried about it. I think the offense will be a lot like it was last year. I think we made some good points there. I think it's going to be a lot more of the same as it was last year. And you've got Josh Heupel as your head coach. It's kind of like Kirby Smart at Georgia in a sense. I won't put him on the same exact pedestal at the moment, but with Kirby Smart's defenses, well, even though 10 players get drafted every year, it seems like, it's just a reload situation on that defense. That's kind of how I feel about Josh Heupel in the offense and this system, right? This system is a plug-and-play system. There's enough guys that have been in the system for a while. This isn't Josh Heupel's second year, right? He's got his system installed. I think the offense is going to be okay. How much better they can be or above that okay mark, I think is where you start to figure out, okay, is this team going to win 9 games? is this team going to win 10 games? Or what's it? Was it going to win 8? The Vegas win total right now sitting at 8.5. All of that also is going to depend on the defense, because this was a team. We talked about the identity running the football last year. They had an identity of playing very solid defense last year.